Awesome. Well, hey guys, I'm Reagan Dubler. I'm a sophomore university scholars major from Washington, D.C., and I am so excited to be running to be external vice president. And yeah, thanks so much for having me here.
Hi Bears, my name is Hunter Walker. I am a current sophomore medical humanities major on the pre-med track from Austin, Texas. And I am also running to be external vice president. I started out in my student government journey this past year as a sophomore senator on the CIA, that's Campus Improvements Affairs Committee. And I'm excited to see potentially what could go forward in my student government career.
Hi, my name is Zach Defencion. I'm a candidate for Student Body External Vice President. I'm from Hoffman Estates, Illinois, a junior studying political science with a minor in public relations. I'm running for this position again this year because I'm ready to serve as your next External Vice President because I'm still passionate about the ideas I wish to bring in the office. Through my slogan, Equity Through Empathy, I hope to achieve my 3 pillars of empathy and really bring change to the External Vice President's office. I've served in student government for 3 years, all 3 years being in the executive branch, and hope to serve you once more and have your trust once more when you vote Zach T for EVP on April 8th and 9th. Thank you.
So why are each of you qualified for your position?
Yeah, I can jump in here. So for the last 2 years, I've gotten the privilege of serving on the external vice president's cabinet as the director of organization engagement. I started as a member of that cabinet and took over as director the second half of freshman year and have continued to serve in that capacity. And it has been a joy to get to work with the student organizations. I think I've learned a lot about what the EVP role is through that, getting to really see the ins and outs of that job, working right alongside 2 different EVP administrations. And so I'm really just ready to hit the ground running day one, knowing what the job is. And with my experience in other organizations, outside experience, I think that I am ready to work with our organizations, administration, the outside local officials that the EVP gets to work with.
I believe last year when I ran for the office of the external vice president, there were a lot of great candidates, and I was really, uncertain because I was running against Gracie Kelleher and some other candidates as well. But now that I've got to serve a whole nother year this year in student government in the executive branch, I'm confident that in this race, I'm the most qualified and ready candidate for the election. And this is simply, like I just said, largely because I have 3 years of experience in student government. I've served under 3 different administrations. My first year as a freshman, I served on the Title IX Policy Committee, advocating for survivors of sexual violence and domestic violence. My second year, I served as Director of Student Government Policy, where I was able to work on several different policy areas, including affordability, health, Title IX, and also diversity and inclusion. And this year, I've been able to serve as Attorney General. But throughout all 3 of these positions I've held in all 3 years I've worked in student government, my main goal has been to really reform the office and leave it better than how I found it. All 3 years I've done that, and I would certainly do that as external vice president. And that would also include work with our student senate as well to help streamline the different processes within our student government so that the EVP's office functions better. I'm more than equipped to do this. I've written 13 different bills throughout my entire time in student government, most of them this year, and I've never served in the student senate. I think that proves and shows that time and time again, I'm able to work across the aisle, work with plenty of different ideologies and people around our student government and members of our student government, and not just within our student government, but also outside of it as well, through our student organizations, student populations, and our greater Waco community as well. So I'm very confident that I'm the most qualified candidate, and yeah.
So as I alluded to earlier, I spent this last year serving as a sophomore senator on the Campus Improvements and Affairs Committee, and my eyes were really open to the power and opportunity that students have through student government to really make a change and impact their student experience for the better through this past year. I was afforded several opportunities, one of which was serving as a delegate for Big 12 on the Hill, in which I met several other Big 12 student government leaders, as well as lobbyists for senators and Housemen and women speakers to lobby for higher level issues for education and things like that, which was incredible and allowed me to see that there's more than just an opportunity for myself and the college experience. But outside of that, my freshman year, I ran for a student government position and I lost by a slim margin. And instead of using that time to pour into the organization, the Lord had other plans for me. And I was really able to just spend my time as a Baylor student among Baylor students to see what it's like to have someone else representing my voice. And I learned a lot about that. But outside of that, I also was able to serve and to volunteer and to get plugged into the greater Waco area. Serving at places like Mission Waco, My Brother's Keeper, and the World Hunger Relief Farm. And I really got to see that it actually is such a blessing and a privilege, not just to be a Baylor student, but to live in Waco as a student in college. And so I'm excited to, in whatever capacity, continue spurring on the rest of the Baylor community to extend their reach beyond the Baylor bubble and reach into the Waco area to grow and serve and love this community as a united front.
What all have y'all done so far that has impacted Baylor? Zach, if you want to go first.
Absolutely, it's a great question. I think that, like I said, through my experience, I've worked through several different realms. In my freshman year, I was really working to advocate for survivors of sexual violence and domestic violence. That was especially prevalent during Sexual Assault Awareness Month, which is also coincidentally this month as well. But in my capacity as Director of Student Government Policy, I was able to not only lead a team of individuals working on different issues, but also focus on some of those issues myself. For example, one of the highlights of my career in student government is really working on transportation issues. I've really tried to really formally ingrain that last year when I was working as Director of Policy. For example, when I-35, when there was limited pedestrian and bicyclist access to the underpasses, I met with the Texas Department of Transportation in their office, set up a meeting and advocated on behalf of students who lived across I-35 or who needed to go underneath to get to the grease pit or downtown Waco to really get them the options that they need. But time and time again, I've always worked to increase visibility of our student government and ensure that people and students know that they have a voice in it. I've done that through opinion articles. I've done that through just talking to friends. But I also have tried to work to make sure that student government is actually receptive to that in a welcoming environment. Because while communication is important to bring out to our student body about student government and the important work it does in the different policy areas it engages in, we need to ensure that our student government is actually receptive. And I've tried to do that through, restructuring bills. I've been on both restructuring bills this year and last year to help restructure our student government, our student senate. And as your external vice president, I vow and promise to continue that work and continue advocating for students inside and outside student government so that it truly works for them instead of them working for student government.
Yeah, so over the last 2 years as Director of Organization Engagement, something that I've been really passionate about working with is helping connect student organizations to be able to communicate with student government well. I think it's really easy for there to be a disconnect between the student body and student government where it seems like it's kind of this big distant thing. And so helping increase communications with student organizations, since those are really the places where students are getting involved and getting to serve through and show their gifts and talents and passions in their communities. And so being able to connect that to make sure that we're representing them well has been something that I've really enjoyed getting to do and getting to know these different students. I also have gotten to serve through other capacities besides just student government to help with the Baylor community, whether it's through Baylor ambassadors or the Baylor in Washington program, the Panhellenic community. I really enjoy just getting to serve the student body. It brings me so much joy to be a part of the Baylor family. And so being able to be involved in a variety of different capacities has really helped me get to know the student body well and give back to the campus in a variety of different aspects with student government as well as organizational engagement.
As sophomore senator, I have really used my opportunity in Senate to author, sponsor, help pass legislation that's helped the student body, whether that's one thing that I authored was a bill that helped give funding to one of our smaller organizations on campus to help them get a movie night so that they can have help support and offer an in-person event in the middle of a pandemic for the student population. I've helped author a bill that provided masks for people who couldn't afford them on their own or for whom that was an impediment in their their journey with COVID. As I mentioned earlier, I got to advocate for mental health resources and college affordability among other Big 12 schools with lobbyists in Washington, D.C. So I have definitely, like Reagan said, enjoyed the opportunity to serve Baylor and help connect them to a greater community through my time as a sophomore senator. And it's been really humbling and encouraging as I've seen. As a freshman, I felt like I wasn't sure if my voice was being heard or not, but I made a point to communicate with my close communities, make sure that they're heard, but also to communicate with people who I don't know as well, and just ask them, hey, like I am a sophomore senator. Do you know if your voice is being heard? Do you feel like Baylor student government is representing you well? And it's been led to great dialogue from there.
What do you feel the role of student government is at Baylor, and what do you think it should be? Hunter, do you want to start?
That's a great question. Student government is an opportunity for students to learn more about our democratic system. I think for my personal journey, it's been an opportunity for me to see how government is structured and how to collaborate with people, but importantly, to stress for the purpose of making a change for the student experience and to better the culture and attitude and experience for the student population at Baylor. And I would also add, not just for the students, but for the entire population for whom the Baylor University serves. And so I think that the student government currently does a great job making change and utilizing their efforts to promote a positive Baylor student experience. And I think that efforts like communication and authenticity and accessibility should be used in the future to continue promoting this and make it just more transparent for the average student to be aware of how their student government is supporting their interests in hopes that their interests are sufficiently met and exceeded for that matter.
Yeah, I think student government is really just an opportunity for servant leadership. I think it's a really cool thing that we get to have an opportunity as students to work for our peers and getting to be that bridge between the peers, the administration, and the greater Waco community. So it's a really cool thing to get to be a part of something where students are getting to work with one another, students from every different grade, from different parts of campus coming together to make change and work on things that they're passionate about. And I think that's really like what student government should be aiming for, is you're helping create a better Baylor experience for students now, but you're also equipping them and preparing them to go out and make an impact post Baylor, but also while they're in Baylor, beyond the Baylor bubble. It's a way to help serve them and equip them and make Baylor really shine as a university to its student body as well as those beyond it.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the role of student government is simple, or at least the role it should have, and that is to be responsive. There are many different issues that have come up this year in particular that students have raised their voices about or raised their concerns about. There have been issues that have been prevalent for some time now, including whether that be COVID-19, affordability, food insecurity, a whole plethora of different issues. And our student government needs to be responsive to that. Our student government needs to fight for students in a time of crisis and really be there for them because they expect their student government to do just that. Whenever students elect members of their student government, whether that be this April 8th and 9th or last fall or last spring, they really expect to, once they check that box and once they elect those representatives, to be there for them. Students do not have the capacity or the long time commitment or to really focus on so many different issues at once. And so they need a big team of people such as student government to really advocate for them. And that's what I'll be as your external vice president. I'll be there as a fighter for all students, all student populations on our campus, student organizations, and our Waco community. I like to say, if I get a call at 1 a.m. from a student organization who's planning an event for the next morning and their caterer went out or one of their vendors fell through, I'm more than willing to drive back to the sub, get into the office and get down to work, because I think that student organizations and every other community that the external vice president's office and student government is supposed to serve really needs a fighter in their ring. And I certainly will be that as the external vice president for our student body.
Great. How will you be accessible to students raising concerns about the work student government does next year? Reagan, if you want to start us off.
Yeah, of course. I think that, yeah, something that, we've touched on a couple times, but like, it's really important that we're bridging that gap between students and student government, because I think sometimes it does feel like it's a distant thing. So I want to just really iterate to students that I'm approachable, that the student government should be approachable, that our purpose there is to be serving you and to be helping you. So when there's something you need, then that is our job to respond to that and to be able to be there to help you. So whether that's being super clear and transparent about what initiatives we're working on, what progress we're making sure that we're communicating clearly to students what our objectives are and how we're achieving them so that they can be a part of that, as well as inviting them into that opportunity, being able to make sure that we're bringing different organizations, different groups of people into those initiatives so that students from all across campus can be involved in that and feel like they're a part of the change that we're making, because it is about them. And so we want them to be involved and included in that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I kind of hinted at this before in one of my responses, but I think we need to create a student government and an office of the external vice president that is truly welcoming to our student body and all of the different constituents and entities that it's supposed to serve. I think that, like I said, we can go out to students and student organizations and say, hey, we have these resources and we have all these great things we can offer and help you out with, but we need to ensure that they're actually willing to come to us first. And they're actually comfortable with us because, I think we've made great strides in past years with the external vice president's office and student government as a whole in doing that. But I think we need to do a lot more because, many different populations and groups, big and small, new and old, need help, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, when next semester they'll be starting up in-person events and other important resources and gatherings and other important operations that they'll need assistance with. So I think that primarily that means, to answer your question, primarily that means making it not only accessible, but also making it welcoming and comforting to our student body and student organizations and the Waco community, but also creating plenty of other resources as well. This year as Attorney General, I've been able to publish legal resources and a report form and report forms on our student government website. And I would certainly bring forth and continue on the suggestion box that External Vice President Kelleher has brought forth this year. But I think that, like I said, bringing forward a comfortable and welcoming office that is really focused on bringing empathy for students and giving them the benefit of the doubt, really, whenever they come to us with a crisis or a concern, is really what the external vice president's office approach should be to these kind of issues and to how it makes its office accessible to others.
I would agree with a lot of what has already been said. I think it's difficult to assume that every student can come immediately to the student government if they don't already know the opportunities that are currently afforded them. For example, a lot of student orgs and students within the orgs they're a part of don't know that they can utilize the student government, the Senate funding allocation. And so that's something that I think is important. And to your point, there are just other touch points where students aren't aware of their opportunities in student government. But I think it's unlikely to assume that they'll feel comfortable and naturally come forward to seek out those opportunities without any sort of awareness. And so I think that's where, yes, a suggestion box could be helpful. And yes, going out and making ourselves available for them to come to us could be helpful. However, I think that stressing mutually beneficial service, which is a big part of my campaign, is ultimately where we are going to see the most reward, because that allows us to proactively go forward and pursue the student, to utilize opportunities like social media and PR. The Lariat can do a huge favor with this as well, to promote certain things like voting records on bills that we pass in Senate, or opportunities through the external vice president's office for the students to get engaged with the Waco community, initiatives of the student body president, you name it. But utilizing our PR so that the average student can be very well educated on just the opportunities, the privileges when student government meeting times happen, that they are allowed to come to those meetings, who those representatives are. Information like this could be helpful to educate them first, to be most accessible. And then secondly, I would say just being involved on campus. And that's something that I do my best, is to be involved and engaged in as many different areas as possible. And when I do that, it allows me to have a broader reach than just simply a small subgroup of people to walk with. You'll notice that in my time, I'm very particular on spending my time
You're
with
over the
different
time.
organizations and clubs. And for that reason, I think that that's the best thing we can do for accessibility for our students.
So, last semester, the No Crying on Sundays bill was passed. So this will probably be a big deal in the next coming years. So do you feel that Gamma should be chartered? And if yes, do you plan to advocate for Gamma's charter and how? And if not, why? And remember that you can raise your hand and have a rebuttal to respond. Reagan, why don't you start us off?
Yeah. So one of the really big pieces of something that I'm advocating for in my campaign is the idea of civility and civil discourse. And so I think that's really where this kind of comes in and connects here, is that I think it's really important to make sure that all of our students feel like they have a voice and feel welcome on our campus. But I also think it's important to be able to engage in those discussions with those students directly. Because I think there are so many students who have different experiences that I can't speak to what experience is like for one student, and maybe there's another student who can't speak to an experience that I've had. And so opening the door to be able to have those conversations, I think is really important, especially on issues like this, where I think a great starting point is just being able to directly talk to students who have had different experiences with this, being able to create a platform where students can engage with that from different kinds of organizations, where we can come together and really talk about it as a group, because I do think it is important for all of our students to be able to have a place. But I think it's also important for us to be able to move forward as a group and as a whole student body together, and not just different groups of us, because I think that when we have those conversations, we'll be able to find that common ground and see where it's important for us to be welcoming and inclusive to people.
All right, Hunter.
So one of my campaign slogans is unity and community. And I believe that the best way to achieve this is through service. As I said earlier, mutually beneficial service, because when we serve other people, mutually beneficial service leads us to the understanding that our act of service means that there's something that we can take away as well, that we can be served in doing that. And civil discourse is a huge component of that. And with service comes an air of humility and a cultural, just active listening, a heart of active listening. And I think that moving forward in the future, student government should definitely create opportunities for students of all different backgrounds and experiences to have their voices be heard, so we can engage in civil discourse, so we can humbly meet each other where we are and figure out, our backgrounds, our stories, and engage with one another. And I don't think that's going to be in an effort to change anyone in any capacity, but instead to celebrate that we are different and that we have an opportunity to learn from those different backgrounds and there's different stories, and trying to move forward in that vein. And like I said, moving on with this service, the Office of the External Vice President, their job description is to communicate and to liaise between the student and the Waco population. And so I think focusing on the job description of the external vice president in that capacity is most important. And so by promoting a push to engage beyond our nuclear Baylor bubble could help open our eyes to the perspective that there's so much more than just the conversations that are happening on campus, and how can we invite those and extend those out so we can love and serve all people and be unified as a greater body of people for a greater prospering than just our individual person.
Hey, Zach.
That's a great question. Thank you for it, Emily. And I am actually really glad it's being asked in this debate, because it is definitely an important conversation that's going on within our university. Not just whether, the more direct policy proposals, whether Gamma should be chartered, but it's really, a much larger issue about LGBTQ plus representation on our campus and treatment within our community. In my response, I can only be a little bit more speculative, because in my role as in the executive branch, I haven't been directly intertwined with those conversations. But on my first platform point, or pillar of empathy, as I like to call it, it reads as equity for all student populations. And I made a point to say equity for all student populations and not organizations, because not every student population fits into a student organization. And not student organization fits into a student population. And not every student population even has a student organization in the first place. And I think that's very important to consider because the external vice president's job is not only to work with the Waco community, but also per the bylaws and per other work that it does is also to work with student organization on campus. And so while a lot of our discussion has been had over the issue of whether or not to charter Gamma this year, especially in our student senate and our faculty senate. And a lot of it has been really referred to our Board of Regents. Like I said, I'm going to be an advocate for all students on our campus. I think that our campus is beautifully diverse with all the different identities and backgrounds that it has and experiences. And I think we need to recognize that and understand that, like I said, we need to give people the benefit of the doubt instead of simply pushing them away or rejecting them or, really just not talking about the issue at all. So like I said, I'm glad we're talking about this issue and I think it's an important one to have, and of course, important conversation to have, but I would not necessarily shy away from it as external vice president because I think that the EVP's office, even though a lot of those efforts have been led through the Senate this year, can also lend a hand to that as well and put some thought into it because it also is in charge of representing students as well.
What is y'all's plans to address issues of racism at Baylor and representation for people of color on campus? Hunter, if you want to get us started.
So my focus for the Office of External Vice President is ultimately to promote an attitude of service, not to sound redundant, but to continually liaise between Baylor University and Waco and the Big 12 schools. And I think conversations with the Big 12 schools, Big 12 collaboration could be really important as we figure out how other universities are responding to this issue. I think, as we mentioned earlier, conversations about accessibility and transparency will be huge in this matter. I know that there have already been this past semester several forums and student-led efforts to have discussions about injustices happening on campus and things like that. And I think raising more awareness to conversations like that, pushing students to go to those things, especially student leaders, could be just so powerful as student leaders learn how to empathize, how to hear, how to understand, and how to advocate for injustices that are happening on campus. And then lastly, just with an air of cultural humility and service, I think that that's going to push an others focused attitude where we'll be looking to seek and serve others in their interests as we grow alongside them together.
Zach, if you want to go ahead.
Absolutely. With addressing this question, I think my response would be that the external vice president's office should clear the way and not be the way. In past years, the external vice president's office has received criticism from the multicultural community and multicultural organizations for, essentially trying to plan the same events or, really engaging in other things that really just bring down the efforts that multicultural organizations are supposed to have. And my answer to, what can we do or what can I do as external vice president is simple. I think that, I want to really bring down bureaucratic and cultural barriers to culture that the external vice president's office can address. That means making Connect more streamlined. It is very hard to submit something on Connect right now for any organization, but especially multicultural organization, because it takes weeks to approve. And then not only that, but our Student Government Allocation Fund, which disperses money to organizations, disproportionately favors existing organizations that have already received funding in the past, which also hurts multicultural organizations on campus. I would address that by actually rerouting any allocations through the EVP's office, because at the moment, any allocations that are assigned in the Student Senate are randomly assigned to 2 senators, and then they're carried through the Senate. I think that the EVP's office can work more intimately with those organizations. But the topic of racism directly, I've been proud to attend every sit-in on campus that has occurred this year. I've been proud to attend the AAPI vigil just a few weeks ago, but that's not enough. And I think that being present is helpful, but actually being actionable is even more helpful. And I'll do that as external vice president by not only, working to make the table, bring people to the table and bring people that have been largely marginalized by the external vice president's office in the past or student government itself, but also make the table longer so that we can fit more people in and really help our student organizations and foster a true sense of community and humility for our student body from our student government and the office of the external vice president.
Reagan?
Yeah, I think, as we've been talking about this, like, this is really kind of where that idea of civil discourse comes back in again. And whether it's through civility, service, community, all those ideas, those are all really centered around building our Baylor family to operate as one and build each other up and serve alongside one another. So that's where I think it's really important to be able to provide those opportunities for students from different backgrounds and different experiences to be able to engage in conversation and learn from one another. Because a lot of students, may not have had those opportunities to either learn from the experiences of others or share their experiences that they want others to be aware of so that, we can learn from them. So I think providing those opportunities is going to be a huge part of the role of making sure that everyone gets the opportunity to feel heard and learn from one another, because if we're a family, we should be working together as a family to be able to grow together, support one another. We want to make sure that everyone feels loved in our community. And so getting to have those conversations with one another, getting to have opportunities to serve alongside one another, to be able to work with our organizations and multicultural organizations is a really important part of being able to build that family community and being able to make sure that we are treating everyone with respect and having open hearts and minds, understanding that we are so much better together when we operate in an attitude of wanting to love one another and learn from one another.
So how will you help the Baylor community to more positively impact the Waco community? Zach, do you want to start?
Absolutely. I think working with the Waco community is critically important. And in past EVP campaigns, there have been a lot of buzzwords used, whether that be bringing a Topgolf or helping to bring a Topgolf, or whatever it may be. But I think we need to bring actionable steps to our Waco community and really see Waco as this beautifully, like I said, beautifully diverse community of people and different cultures that are spread without it. There are roughly 200,000 residents, I believe, in Waco, and it extends super far south on I-35 and super far north and super far west and east. And it's not just the grease pit. And I think that part of that through the EVP's office means helping out marginalized or businesses owned by marginalized communities. It really helps to, it really means exposing students to a lot of different businesses and establishments that are just simply lesser known to students. And I think that most importantly, though, kind of like the same idea I had on how people can approach the EVP's office. Our student body external vice president and its cabinet must be receptive and sensitive to our Waco community, because like I said, there are a variety of different cultures, and most Baylor students only arrived on campus a few years ago, or maybe even this year, and arrived to Waco this year or whatever it may be. And I think that we need to be sensitive and cannot just come into the community and spread awareness or spread certain initiatives. I think we need to work with the community, and that not only means the city council or the mayor, that also means the Waco Chamber of Commerce, the African American Chamber of Commerce, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, all these different entities that are leaders within our communities, so that we can be a leader to them as well. And so as the external vice president, I would certainly help to pursue that ideology and that behavior and that attitude towards our Waco community, because I think that the Waco community serves us so greatly, and we serve it so greatly as well. But we need to be sensitive and understanding that Waco community might be different than the community we might have grown up in the first place as students.
So in my time growing in relationship and serving the Waco community, I have learned that there's so many opportunities for Waco to be served and improved that span beyond just what I would have originally expected. That making an impact in the Waco community doesn't have to look just like a project for stepping out, but actually can be something as simple as going to Katie's Frozen Custard instead of Andy's, or changing where you buy your groceries. Certain things like that that are huge impacts with very little inconvenience to a college student. And so I think optimizing the accessibility and transparency of those opportunities to allow Baylor students to continue to promote their Waco experience is the first and most important thing. I think bringing Waco to the college students could also be very important, whether that be service opportunities for someone to do on Fountain Mall or a freshman to do in their dorm room. those could also be very impactful, as well as not even service opportunities, but food trucks and Waco local businesses, as we've started to see over this past year now that COVID is allowing them to come back. Can we promote that initiative? And as well as just dialoguing with, like Zach said, leaders in the Waco area, that Waco isn't just a grease pit. And so I've had these wonderful conversations with Jimmy Dorrell, the co-founder of Mission Waco, on how that there's something more that we can do than just a service opportunity. And Robert Granger, who is working with Shepherd's Heart, and he was telling me about how he said that the most important thing Waco needs is a relationship with students, not just a service opportunity or quick evangelism moment, but to walk alongside of Waco and disciple them and to grow with them. And so to promote that opportunity, that's my ultimate mission in campaigning for EVP, is to spread the news that we have an opportunity to grow in a relationship with Waco, to really support them and encourage a hopeful future for everyone.
Yeah, I think what really makes the EVP role so special is that we do have the opportunity to be that bridge between students and the Waco community. And I think it's really cool that so many of our students and the school just really has a heart for loving others. But I think a lot of times students just don't know how they can take part in that, or they don't know about the opportunities that are available to them. So I really want to work to help make that more easily accessible to students. We have such a special city that we have the opportunity of living in for these 4 years, maybe more if we're staying here after. And we're so blessed as a Baylor community with so many resources and so many opportunities to be able to take ownership of where we are, make Waco our home. We really have to be able to get invested with the community. Like they were saying, like it's not just a one-time service opportunity. I think we have so many cool opportunities like stepping out where we get to work on service projects, and those are so amazing. And I love that Baylor does that. But I think it's also really important to make sure that students are aware of ways that they can really partner with these organizations and walk alongside them long-term, and make that their own, and like have that be part of what being a part of the Waco community looks like for them. So one specific thing I would like to do is meet with a lot of the leaders of some of these service organizations, local outreach groups, to be able to hear directly from them what they need from us, because it's not our job to just come in and like, have our idea of what we want our, day to look like. We're supposed to be serving them and partnering with them. So I'd like to work alongside those leaders of organizations to know how we can be the most helpful to them as possible. And then compile just easily accessible resources, make it really easy for students to be able to see what those opportunities are. So that every student has different gifts and talents. Everyone has different passions and abilities. And there's so many different service opportunities that everyone can find somewhere that they can fit. Everyone can find where they're passionate about and where they can serve and use their gifts to give back to the community. And so making sure that that's something that students have access to be able to find that place for them, I think is going to be a really exciting step in helping students make Waco their home.
Well, first, I'd love to, of course, say thank you to Lariat for hosting this debate. I think that's very important, as we all said, to really have a lot of civil discourse and a lot of civility in this election, and really in every issue that we talk about. I've been involved in a form of student government since the 6th grade. When I was first elected as in my 6th grade advisory to be their representative to our student council in my middle school. And ever since then, I've been a member every year, and I've been proud to serve as on the Baylor University student government for the past 3 years as well. Like I said, through all 3 years in the executive branch. And I think that in this election, the issues matter, the policy proposals matter, but also the experience matters. I have been privileged to receive endorsements from several different organizations, support from many different members of student government existing, and also support from people who are trying to join student government in the upcoming election as well. And I think that in this election, there are a lot of things that we need to recognize with the office of the external vice president. And the fact that is that it's a very important role that needs to be elected very delicately. I think that our student body external vice president is underutilized, or the role office of it is underutilized in past years. And it needs to be utilized a lot more, so it's actually serving students, student organizations, and their greater Waco community as well. I'm proud to run again this year. I may have lost last time, but like I said, I am very proud about this office. I hope that y'all will vote Zach T for EVP on April 8th and 9th. But above all, I encourage y'all to check out my Instagram at Zach T for EVP. I post some pretty fire TikToks on there. And, of course, have conversations with your peers about the issues that matter to you on this campus and within this community, because those issues matter and so does your vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us here today. And thank you to Zach and Hunter for participating in this conversation. It's been really exciting to learn more about what y'all's visions are and getting to engage in this conversation with y'all. So thank you so much for that. Serving on student government for the last 2 years has been such a joy, and I have so enjoyed getting to know you, the student body, getting to learn more from y'all. It's been such a blessing getting to see the beauty of all these different groups, getting to see what y'all are passionate about. And I want to continue serving y'all and leading that mission again this next year. I believe that through working together, we can really create a culture of civility, service, and community on our campus. And that's something that we can facilitate here now and beyond the Baylor bubble with other schools in the Big 12 and the Waco community. And I'm really excited to see where we can go with that and all that we can accomplish together. So I really appreciate y'all's support. And if y'all want to learn more about some of my specific policy objectives, then Reagan for EVP on Instagram. And thanks so much.
Yes, thank you so much to Zach and Reagan for entering in this conversation and having civil discourse. And thank you to the Lariat for opening up and providing this opportunity for us to have these conversations. They're so important, and it's been encouraging to hear everyone's initiatives and their hopes and plans for the future of not only the Baylor but Waco population alike. The heart of my campaign is 1 Thessalonians 2:8, which says, "Because we loved you so much, we were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well." And as Baylor students, we recognize that Waco is our home. But my hope is that we would be humble enough to love those who share it with us, as we pour back not into just the city, but the people of Waco, and that we would be willing to walk with those people and be delighted to share our lives with them. I have experience in student government, but I also have experience building relationships, not just a diverse group of students on campus, but also a diverse group of organizations within the Waco community. I have advocated for the student experience, the Baylor community, and the Waco community for our state officials in the Big 12 Conference on the Hill. I've started to form relationships with other Big 12 student government leaders, but most importantly, I've formed some genuine, real connections with Waco people who are proactively using their livelihood to make Waco a better place. And I want to utilize those efforts and the relationships that I've made over the past 2 years and harping on the relationships I've made in the Waco community to bridge those gaps so we can see overall human flourishing for our greater communities alike. I hope that you would visit my Instagram at walk_with_walker_ for more about my campaign, and continue to walk with me April 8th and 9th to the ballot as you look for your email where you can vote there. I'm so excited for the opportunity to grow together and to seek unity and community. Please walk with Walker April 8th and 9th. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for your time.